The cornerstone of the sales process is building relationships, meeting people where they are, solving their problems, and addressing their pain points. If you can do that, you can make a lot of money. Making a personal connection with them and going beyond the small talk are also effective ways to close the deal. Drilling down on its most granular form, relationship selling is defined by Indeed as a technique used to prioritize making a personal connection over other details such as the price to close the deal. The customer is more likely to develop some trust with you, your brand, and your product if you meet them on their personal level. Interacting with your customers is a good way to break the ice and ease the tension for every aspect of the sales process. No one knows that better than my friend Ted Fluck. For more than 2 decades now, he's focused on building dynamic sales teams through consultations and recruiting engagements. He is the functional chief revenue officer for dynamic sales teams. As a leader of high-performing sales and marketing teams, Fluck knows firsthand the importance of creating a dynamic sales strategy in today's high-demand and hyper-focused sales and lifestyle environments. At the end of the day, the sales process at its core is all about people and the productivity of our connection, empathy, and enthusiasm which we bring to the process. Fluck and I were equally as excited to sit down and have a conversation about executing the sales process at its highest level, how to wash, rinse, and repeat the sales process to line your pockets with consistent cash and make a measurable difference. It was a wide-ranging conversation on how to best execute the sales pipeline, and one in which I'm happy to bring to all of you right now. So, without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm excited and encouraged to engage in conversation with you this morning all about the sales process. Great to see you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, Ted, I know that you're obsessed with sort of building a dynamic sales teams and teaching them the art of closing the deal, my friend. So tell me how you got to where you are today and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. It really is a matter of just a lifetime of sales in many different markets and industries. And what I've been able to do is just being able to move in and out of different industries as a sales rep in my younger years, and then in sales leadership and management, and still continue to learn all the different nuances and appreciate what really drives and builds dynamic teams, regardless of what industry you're in. So I was able to take a lot of those successes and a lot of that experience, small companies, big companies, companies, international companies, US companies, and take it and be able to publish a few books and be able to take my consulting services out and really communicate to the audience, just like we're doing today, about the value of high functioning and high performance sales teams.
Absolutely. So, Ted, let's dive into it. Tell me, what do you think makes a great salesperson, and what do you think is the key to closing the sales process?
Yeah, so this is a great question, because what makes a great salesperson can really vary on the different types of companies that you work with, or the different types of sales process that you're interested in doing. But at the end of the day, everybody's looking for really the same general traits that are really the great foundation to an excellent salesperson. Great salespeople need to have initiative. They need to have and accept accountability, and they need to be able to handle rejection well. And they need to have that resilience factor and grit, which means they're going to push a little bit harder after they've been told no, and they're going to get back in the saddle, and after they've been kicked off that horse, and they're going to get back on it again and keep rolling. So I would suggest that those are the foundational traits to any excellent salesperson. And then from there, of course, you have to learn technical competencies and what their product is and what the market is. And we would refine a great salesperson for the company that they're working with, depending on those types of needs from that individual company, what the products they're selling and what the market demands as well.
And Ted, sales doesn't come naturally to people sometimes. So if you're getting into the sales process for the first time, do you think it can be a learned trait, or do you think it's something that you have innately? So do you think sales can be a learned process as well?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And believe me, there's a lot of debate about that. So a lot of people like to say that, oh, you're a natural born salesperson, or resilience can't be taught, or grit is something that you have through life experience, and things along that nature. But I would suggest it's not necessarily the true that way. There are definitely people who have those traits and have characteristics that they're born with, that would lead towards an excellent sales career. However, I'll make it very clear that people can absolutely learn what they need to do. Everybody can learn about sales processes and manage sales processes, and can practice resilience and overcoming and challenging themselves. It really does depend on the individual, and some people may need to learn more or may need to adapt more of their comfort zone than others. But that is definitely something that is a great discussion point. So I do feel that most people can be trained into sales and trained into being successful salespeople. But the contrary conversation to that is whether or not people would enjoy it. If you change too much from your natural tendencies or towards what you enjoy, would you really enjoy the sales process? Would you enjoy being told no a lot, or would you enjoy having to cold call strangers? There are some people which just do not feel comfortable calling strangers and don't want to do it, and that's okay. But they can learn how, and I think that's the important thing that we want to talk through. We can learn techniques, we can learn how to make it more comfortable, and then you as an individual, or that salesperson as an individual, would need to determine whether or not that's something they want to continue to pursue.
Yeah, and building on that, Ted, I believe that if you learn the sales process, it can also elevate other aspects of your life in terms of engaging with people and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So tell me the positive benefits of being a good salesperson, and how it may trickle down to other aspects of your life.
For sure. It's funny you bring that up specifically. I was actually talking to a strength conditioning coach and a nutritionist and a trainer for people. And I find it very, very similar to somebody who perhaps wants to set a goal of running a 5K or maybe a half marathon or a marathon and hasn't done it before. Or somebody perhaps who wants to make some lifestyle changes into a healthier lifestyle for themselves. So if it's not something you're used to doing, then what do you have to start doing in order to take that first step? How do you measure consistency? How do you measure your success? These are all the same things we would do, for example, if you were setting a goal to run a marathon or lose weight or make a healthier lifestyle for yourself, or for sales as well. So you would have to start, start with the end in mind. What is the goal? What is the process? How do you make the process something that you enjoy? How does it become a habit? How does it become a lifestyle? And then how do you measure yourself for success along the way? So you need to make adjustments if it's working or not. I would suggest that those traits that you would learn in the sales process would be identical to a lot of other healthy habits that can form in different areas of your life, and you can take into different areas of your life as well.
Yeah, and sales, Ted, is all about relationships. And, there's a sign in my office that says that life is a constant game of networking. So that can also be applied to the sales process, can't it?
No, absolutely. I mean, nothing is more important than taking care of a customer. And when you really have good relationships with your customer, you really cement that customer loyalty. And what that enables you to do is really skyrocket the customer lifetime value for you as well. So when you're taking care of a customer, you're taking care of a client, you're really getting into the fact that how can I take care of this person? What are their needs? How does my product satisfy their needs? And then how do I continue to service them so they're super excited about asking more questions or validating some information or some that they may already have, and how can they come to me for any additional questions or any additional consideration in the future that they may have for my product or for similar products as well.
Yeah, Ted, one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you this morning is because, outside of hosting this podcast, I also do some motivational speaking. So I'm familiar with the whole lead generation process and the whole process of sometimes less is more, as certainly in the area of sales that I'm in as a speaker. So tell me about striking a balance when you're starting a relationship with someone and really honing into adding value, because that's the whole point of sales, isn't it?
It really is. So I'm going to try and hit two things that you bring up. There's two points that I always like to bring up to salespeople as far as that goes. So break it down to the 1/3, 2/3 rule. You should be 2/3 of the conversation should be asking the client questions and understanding the client, and 1/3 should be validation and facts about how those questions that the responses that you get from the customer, are validated by your product, or how your product can help solve the problem. And that's a really good way to put it. And the other kind of thing is one mouth and two ears for a lot more listening and a lot less speaking is kind of a good way to think about that as well. You really need to learn about the customer, and going back to what you brought up earlier about customer relationships, but you really need to learn about the customer, engage with the customer by asking them questions about what those needs are. And you know what the funny thing is? I mean, sometimes the product's not a fit, or it's not a right time. And that's okay too. If you can identify that, and maybe it's just not the right time for a customer. So that's okay. But what you want to be able to do is make sure that you have a good process where you ask the customer and you're asking the client permission to come back at a different time. The key is you're trying to provide a value service or a valued product to solve a problem that the customer has. And you're only going to find that out by asking them questions, like not making assumptions.
Absolutely. Ted, I call it the Judge Judy rule of sales. She always says that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right?
Absolutely.
And, Ted, I'm curious to ask you about inclusivity in sales, because as I'll share just a little bit about myself. So I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally, and I help organizations build inclusive cultures outside of hosting this podcast. So tell me the importance of infusing inclusivity in sales as well, and how much that is important.
I think it's extremely important. We shouldn't make any types of assumptions as to what our clients want or need until we ask and find out. And I think it's very interesting to think about that. It's a really, really good question, because it's not one that's brought up very often in sales. I'll tell you, one of the things about my book, which I just recently wrote about hiring dynamic sales teams and the value to that, is moving away from that stereotype salesperson. And, in the back of my mind, I can tell you a pharmaceutical sales rep looks like this. A surgical sales rep looks like this. A manufacturing sales rep acts this way. But at the end of the day, the customers are really as diverse as our human population is, no matter where we are. So we need to respect that and look into that. And we need to be able to provide our customers that reference point of having a diverse enough sales team and sales force and an inclusive sales force that makes sure that all of our customers are being heard, because people buy from people who are like them, and not everybody looks and acts just like Ted, and not everybody's going to be just like you either. We really need to have the diversity and the inclusion in the workplace, and particularly in our sales models and our sales experiences, to really benefit the customer and benefit the organization, and make sure that we have a lot of different approaches as far as what we're presenting to the customer, and a lot of different perspectives that more diverse salespeople will bring to the team also.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ted, you say you've learned the hard way to make sure that the vision that you have as a CEO also aligns with the actions of your sales team. So I'm wondering, as long as you've been in this game of sales, what's the greatest lesson you've learned about multiplying that sales process of success? Because you have to fall before you can walk in sales, right?
You do, and I've made mistakes along the way for sure. I think the most important thing to really come to is alignment with the organization. I think organizations themselves don't always really understand their own culture and their own alignment, and it's really important not to have the poster on the wall is not necessarily your corporate culture. Your corporate culture is determined by how the people who are on the ground in the manufacturing facility, or the people who are building your products, or the people who are selling the products, working with the customer every day. Those are the people who are really going to tell you what the culture of the organization is. And the decisions that leadership makes that affect them are really the decisions that are going to affect the corporate culture. And it sounds, that doesn't sound very intuitive. It sounds very natural, but oftentimes we don't think that way, though. Oftentimes we talk about words and not deeds and not actions. And why my point is around that is that the most high functioning sales and marketing teams that I've worked with, and the most high functioning teams across the board, as far as that goes, are aligned in a very open environment where there's clear communication as to the cause and effects to having profit-based goals, growth-based goals, or maybe even just sustainability goals. But people have to understand that if they create a goal, that they need to have the support structures there that are capable of achieving that goal, and not just driving numbers to drive numbers' sake. And oftentimes, a lot of organizations just pick an arbitrary number without doing the appropriate amount of market research, and they strive for that number because they want to, quote unquote, push the sales team or push the marketing team. That might work for a few quarters, but that's not going to be sustained long-term growth, and it's not going to lead towards a corporate culture that's going to have good long-term growth with a happy, thriving sales team, which is always significantly more productive than turnover and churn that you would get from otherwise not truly identifying the corporate culture and truly understanding what those organizational goals are, or how they'll affect the team and why they're trying to achieve them.
Yeah, and then tell me your thoughts building on those points, Ted, on the importance of authenticity in sales, because people are getting smarter these days, Ted, and if you're not authentic with them, they can see right through you these days. So tell me about the authentic part of the sales process and how important that is.
So I love that. So we are probably I don't know the data, but I'd be willing to say that we're probably the most over-solicited group of humans on the planet here in the United States of America. And you're right; they can see right through people. They know the buzz, they know the tricks. People's emails are just inundated with catchy titles with no substance. That's not of value to them. Quick conversations from people who truly don't understand their products. These are all the faults that we've done to ourselves in sales and in sales organizations. So there's no doubt that we're over solicited, and the authentic nature of really trying to help people and trying to serve people and really believing in your product versus transactional processes transactional processes have really taken over the past few years, and we have to swing the pendulum back. And what I mean by that is We're trying to drive leads so much, and we're using great tools like AI. We're using great tools. It's all the software that's at our fingertips, and the like SDRs and BDRs are fantastic to generate new leads. But are we really being authentic with valuing the customer? Or are we just trying to get people excited to set an appointment for somebody else who's going to close the deal? And we have to be careful of those processes, and we have to be careful of how the customer feels through that process. I have nothing against SDRs or BDRs. I'm just suggesting that we really need to figure out how we're using them and how we're soliciting the markets. And if we're just, constantly bashing people over the head with the same message again and again and again, it's going to tire very, very quickly. So the authenticity of reaching out with a genuine love of the product and the organization you work with, which only comes from a strong culture, and the genuine feel that you're and the need of the customer, that your product's going to satisfy their needs, and you really do care about doing that. That's what true authentic sales comes from. And that needs to be the foundation. The customer's needs come first, and your product should be the great solution to that. And you should be happy and enthusiastic about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ted, what's your philosophy on the concept of upselling? And how do you think upselling can be done effectively without being annoying, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, no, I think that's the perfect way to put it. There's no better way to put it. How do you sell without being annoying, right? I believe in permission-based sales, and what I mean by that is literally asking the client questions. When is an appropriate time for me to come back and talk to you about X product? Or based on our previous conversations, it sounds like this may be of value to you as well. Should I call you back in 6 to 8 weeks, or should I call you back next week? I believe in permission-based sales that way. So we're always having the conversation of value for the customer. You're always asking the customer what's the right time to come back and talk more about your products and services. And frankly, it should be done through reviews. If you have a product and service for a customer, what is your process about following up, and what's your customer retention process? Do you have account managers who are contacting your clients regularly? Or are you only calling them when you want to sell? So it comes back to that transaction-based versus relationship-based. If you are consistently reaching out to the customer and giving them more value before you make the ask for a sale, then upselling is very natural. If you're only calling them in a time where you want to upsell them, you're going to be annoying. So don't be that guy.
Yeah. And tell me, what's the value of the follow-up process? And when you look at CRMs or customer relationship management systems, what sort of a value do you place on those as well?
So that's really what I like, the complete revenue cycle, like the value after the purchase. Is that what you're asking? Like after the customer's initially closed?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's so. There are statistics out there that it may cost seven times the amount of money to get a new customer than to retain a current customer. And so when we talk about your annual contract value or your annual client value and your recurring revenue within your organization, you need to take a good hard look at how much money you're investing, not just closing the deal, but how much money you're investing into keeping that client and making sure that they stay around. Because a lot of times the most money is made in years 2, 3, and 4. But if you're not making the customer feel valuable after that initial purchase, they may not be there for those additional years. So looking at the complete revenue cycle, not only what you're doing in marketing to get new leads and how you're driving market qualified leads to sales qualified leads and how you're taking them to close, but what you're doing after the close. What's the customer experience? What's the user relationship with after the close is extremely important, because that's what's going to help you upsell or sold multi-year contracts, get referrals, and build your business from that, like creating raving fans in that business that you already have. There's a lot of times, a lot of products, not all of them, but some products are very commoditized and very transactional based, but most aren't. So if you're looking into anything with an additional contract value or client value after the initial sale, you really need to take a good long hard look at what you're investing in and what type of time you're putting into the post-sale revenue cycle.
Yeah, and Ted, just before I ask you about your book, I wanted to also ask you about how do salespeople avoid sort of burnout or lack of motivation to continue to do what they do. I always say that the 3 keys to life and the sales are to bring energy, enthusiasm, and effort. But sometimes the salespeople, if you repeat the same process over and over again, it can get repetitive. So what's the key to not getting repetitive as a salesperson and avoiding the burnout as well?
That is an excellent question. And it probably is also why there's about a 3.5 year lifespan to a salesperson in a particular position, and they tend to move. Salespeople are, they take risks. They're not risk adverse. So moving from one company to another means nothing to a salesperson if they believe there's another opportunity there. But that's not always the best thing for the company. But it can be seen as a way to clear new space for new energy and new people to come back in. But again, I think the value to building long-term relationships with your sales organization is creating new and dynamic ways to present your products, perhaps even cycling people through different regions, different territories, getting them excited about new customers to face and meet. Some companies are large enough where they may have multiple product lines where they could move salespeople around. But there's nothing wrong with considering a shuffling of salespeople. So particularly if they need a break from the repetitive cycle that they're currently in, and giving them new opportunities that way to sell new products for the organization. And again, new products, new geographies, new territories can also be ways to manage that. But at the end of the day, though, you really need to, create a culture where they're incentivized. And, in today's culture with today's generations of salespeople, it's not all about the commission and comp plan. It may be time off, may be very, very valuable. Some people may look at that as more valuable than making an extra bonus, as getting an extra week vacation, whatever it is, or maybe Friday afternoons off or Fridays off in the summer. Looking at that type of cycle, I think, is really important for salespeople because they do achieve burnout. They tend to work in really intense spurts where they're putting a lot of time and energy into things during certain times of the year, and then they need to pull back and recover. So looking into those dynamic things, which might be important for an organization or might be important to the salesperson to stay motivated and keep refreshed, is important to do and have that type of flexibility within your organization. Like, I know I personally really do need like long weekends, and that's kind of good for me. I don't need necessarily a few weeks off all the time. I love to take them with my family, don't get me wrong, but I need a Friday and a Monday off every now and then to really recharge. And when I come back, I have a whole new set of energy. It's just really important for me to bring back to work.
Hashtag Labor Day, right now.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Ted, tell me about your book, Transforming Your Sales Strategy, and what it's all about, my friend.
Yeah, here we are. So thank you for that. So transforming the sales strategy is really broken up into 3 parts. And we've talked about a lot of these parts today, but it really is taking a good hard look at how you're hiring high performance sales teams. And I really believe in deconstructing if companies are stagnant, your sales is stagnant and just you're not getting where you need to be, but you need to deconstruct old processes and old myths and old dogma, and you need to reconstruct that. And oftentimes that comes with rehiring a sales force or some of that sales force. And it's kind of draconian to talk like that, but sometimes that has to happen. Regardless, when you're bringing new people into your sales team, what the book talks about is really, as we discussed already, identifying not only the corporate culture, but the corporate's relationship with sales and marketing and the corporate demands of sales and marketing. Again, not just what's on the poster in the office, but what is actually being done and what the demands actually are. And it's okay to have a high growth organization. You're just going to need high growth salespeople for that. And if your organization doesn't value that growth as much as customer retention or maybe a much longer sales cycle, then we need to talk about supports and salespeople who don't need immediate results and don't need to feel satisfied, on a daily basis with another close. So taking a look at the corporate culture that way is very important. And once we identify those corporate traits, then we can identify, and like we go into part 2 of the book, where we're really talking about what are the behavioral traits of the salesperson that are a good match. How do we find that out in the behavioral interviewing process? What does that look like? How do we go about that? And then we move on to the third part, of course, how to conduct those interviews and how to support, track, and maintain the sales effort and make sure that the KPIs are being met and everyone is finding the right metrics for their organization. And we're really kind of skyrocketing that sales team, because really at the end of the day, what people want are year over year growth and maximizing profit margins. So how do we work with our sales team with precision? How do we identify the right people with precision, go through an excellent sustained interview process, and really become have an unshakable sales team where we can really look at that sales cycle and we can really rocket forward the growth of the company. That's the intention of having a high performing sales team.
Yeah, and Ted, we've talked about a lot about meeting the customer where they are during the sales process, but I'm also curious to get your thoughts on the importance of appealing to the emotion of the salesperson and really meeting them where they are. And what I mean by that is if you have a particular person on your sales team and you have to encourage them to bring up their numbers or bring up their performance, how important is it to really appeal to their emotions and really say you're really good at talking with people, so maybe we'll send you to more networking events. So how important is it to appeal to the emotions of the sales team as well?
Sure. Well, I mean, the book Strengths Finder and all those different ways of looking at people, and different people have different strengths than others. And being able to customize and tailor your sales process or the sales events or the organizational needs around people's strengths could be a huge way to keep them motivated and keep them happy within the organization. Really, people strive for feedback. And I mean, I can't tell you how often sales managers don't give good, honest, tangible feedback to their sales team. And if you're not speaking candidly with the people that you're working with as a sales leader, then shame on you. Why are you even there? You really need to be able to sit down at a minimum, like once a quarter, face to face with a good, heartfelt conversation. How are you doing? How are you reaching your goals? If we're not reaching them, what's the plan? How are we going to get back to where we need to be? How can I help? What's in your way? What are the barriers? And ensure that the salesperson has accountability for what they need to be doing. And it's not just excuse based. I mean, look, I've been in sales a long time. I know we have high demands of things that would make the next sale easier, or what we could get from the home office or the marketing team to make the next sale. But we really need to be accountable to ourselves and accountable to the work and the activity that we're doing, and what that above the line accountability does look like as far as an individual sales rep. So having that communication with the sales leadership consistently, not when they fall too far behind the curve. When it's really easy to make a course correction when you're just a little bit off. It's very hard to make a course correction in third quarter or going into fourth quarter when you're way off your target, and you're not going to be able to get back in time. It's very unlikely that you'll be able to get back in time. So having that good, honest conversation throughout the year and on a continuous process about what motivates the salesperson, how they're feeling within the organization, how they're feeling about the products, what their customers are saying, and how you can support that person as a sales leader and be a true servant sales leader is very, very important. So I think communication is absolutely key in keeping people happy, because people thrive on honest, legitimate feedback, and being able to have that open communication, that transparent communication and feedback loop is essential to people's happiness.
Yeah, and just one final follow-up in this area. I'm curious to also ask you, Ted, about your definition of elite leadership as managers. You went through it as a sales manager, but tell me, when you look at elite leadership for corporate leaders, how do you think they can really get the most when it comes out of potential out of their employees? So how do you define elite leadership?
Well, that's a tough definition. So, I mean, really, there's so many books written on that and things along those lines. But my favorite definition of leadership falls out to this: is leadership is getting people to do what they know needs to be done, but left to their own devices, don't make it happen. So it's one of those things which is like, you can't make somebody who's simply not going to do the work. And that comes down to just like, who are you hiring? What type of organization do you have? And what's your process for getting the right people on the bus at the right time? But oftentimes people fall into rhythms, or they fall into habits, or that need to be corrected along the way. So if they know they need to do the work, What's the difference between like a goal and a commitment? And good leaders take people from that goal that they have to somebody who's committed to getting it done. Some people who talk about their goals, but they're not accountable to the work on a daily basis. And that's a very, very interesting question to ask, because the definitions of leadership are huge. But nonetheless, though, leaders need to put their teams first. Leaders need to understand that, the people in the organization, if they're happy, if they're thriving, if they're believing in the company, if they believe in the service the company provides or the products their companies provide, that if it provides an excellent solution to their customers, we need to make sure that they're always happy and that they're always feel that the company's moving in the right direction and they're proud to be part of it. That doesn't mean that, that you don't ask hard things or you don't say no, but they have to understand the why sometimes, and understanding the long-term corporate vision can help with that. And it comes again, we just talked about it, but clearly articulating your corporate vision and a transparency is essential to where people are going. And it's okay to tell people that change is happening. It's okay to tell people that that we need more, and how can we get there, and can you give us more? Ask those questions to people. Those are not common questions that just seems like it's common sense, but it doesn't happen. I can assure you, it doesn't happen often in the workplace. So leadership really needs to take accountability of themselves as to what they're doing. Are they staying in an ivory tower and really not listening to their teams, really not hearing what's going on, and how are they making the decisions, and how are they moving the organization forward? Those are all essential traits to leadership, and particularly around sales and marketing and growth in an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ted, we both know that there are multiple ways today to reach a customer, whether it's through traditional media, the print version of doing it, or social media, or digital media. So how important is it, in your view, to really infuse creativity in your messaging when you're really looking to recruit new people to buy or sell what you're trying to sell to them? So how important is creativity in the sales process?
Yeah, so it's extremely important. It is very difficult to get a message out today to people that's different than others, and it's very, very different. Very, very difficult to show the differentiation between products and services, because people, the megaphone of marketing has just gotten, there's no barrier to entry anymore. It used to be taking out ads in newspapers and billboards was extremely expensive and cost prohibitive, but everybody can get an Instagram account today. Everybody can have a Facebook group. The barrier to entry is non-existent as far as branding goes, and as far as marketing products goes, and as far as your voice goes. Now, with that being said, is how do you orchestrate your marketing plan, and how do you orchestrate what you're doing as far as an excellent campaign, and how do you pull all those resources together, and how do you get to your audience in a way that really does resonate, and how do you find their needs, and how are you that exciting organization that can solve their needs? That's really the key, because otherwise it's just noise. If you're not orchestrating your campaigns very well across all the everything you just said, if you don't have excellent mail campaigns, if you don't have good email, if you're not looking at good SEO within your website, and if that doesn't coordinate well between the multiple channels of social media, everything has to be orchestrated today. And excellent organizations are finding where their customers lie, where their customers are as far as those medias go, and what those they're tracking very intensely, what their return is on all those different advertising or all that different marketing, because it's extremely difficult to track just one singular source or to find out the most effective. So really, it does come down to the orchestration of all of them is what makes you stand out the most. Customers need to be touched. It used to be like 6 or 7 times, you need to be able to reach out to a customer. Now they're saying it's up to 12 to 14 times before they buy. And that's just because that's 3 or 4 times on Instagram, 2 or 2 times on LinkedIn, 3 times on Facebook, 4 emails. I'm not doing the math right now, but you get my point. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. The grind never stops in sales, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah, and Ted, I'm going to end our conversation with a 2-part question because they're interconnected. You Say that your goal professionally is to help leaders make better decisions, and you're hopeful that your experience in sales can make the difference. So tell me, how's that mission going? And then finally, Ted, when you look at your life from a personal and a professional standpoint, how do you want your legacy to be defined?
Wow. Powerful question. So, yes, I have found more and more executives within organizations are taking a good hard look at not just the hard sales traits, but the soft sales and like the soft effects of an organization. And it's not just words when we talk about culture. It's not just words when we talk about inclusivity. There's deep resonating power behind that, and people feeling that like they're contributing to a company, and people feeling valued, and communication, and having a voice within an organization. You're really satisfying deep internal needs within people that way. And so I found a lot of change that I bring to organizations is resonating very, very well when we start to focus on those types of traits within people and those types of values within the sales and leadership and executive leadership to really affect people on a much deeper level than just are we going to achieve 12.2% ROI this year, type of thing, and really getting into the core culture and that connection between organizations. And people should feel connected at work. You should have great friends at work and great colleagues at work for sure. And my legacy is a wonderful question. I really do want to be known as somebody where 10, 20, 30 years from now, there's dozens and dozens of executives out there, chief revenue officers and chief marketing officers or sales directors, that can look back on their experience through life and know that they learned a lot of their positive traits. They learned a lot of their positive sales skill sets from perhaps me or from places I directed them to go to. Because you always are learning, right? You're learning from negative experiences, you're learning from positive experiences. And I really pray that every day that, I land on those positive experiences and people look back and say, that was one of the best people I ever worked with. And he was really able to help me, achieve whatever it was for my levels of success, really helped me believe and take the next level steps needed for them to vault their own careers to their own levels of success. So that would be my legacy. I would love for that to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Life is a constant game of learning, right? No matter how many degrees you have on the wall or how many years you spend in school, you can always learn something from somebody else, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Ted, tell me, if people want to get connected with the great work that you're doing in the sales process, my friend, what's the best way they can do that?
Oh, I appreciate it. So just think dynamicsalesteams.com. So Dynamic Sales Teams on LinkedIn, www.dynamicsalesteams is my website. And they can always reach out to me at Ted Fluck at Dynamic Sales Teams. So I have all sorts of ways to get a hold of people, but it's not too hard to find me. They can find the books on Amazon as well. And I hope people reach out and get to know a little bit more about how we can work together in the future and really take your revenue from where it is now and skyrocket that in the future and really build long-term dynamic growth.
Well, Ted, I really want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me about the sales process this morning. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here today.
No, thank you for the time. I appreciate it as well. It's been great getting to know you and work with you today.